Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. In today's video, I'm starting off making a spread for my reading journal. I finally read Masterpiece, or I guess I should say I finally finished Masterpiece because I think I read like 17 chapters last fall, and the entirety of season 1 is only 24 chapters, so I'd almost read the whole entire thing without realizing it. But anyway, I'm so excited to finally be making this spread. First of all, I love this spread. Remember at the beginning of the year when I told you I love primary colors with the little pink? That is exactly what this spread is, and it turned out so cute. For anyone who has never heard of Masterpiece, I just feel like everyone has. It's a blmanhwa about this man named Inchol. He works for some sort of like congresswoman sort of thing. I don't know how the Korean government works, but something like that. And she has tasked him with going to this part of the city where they're doing this like redevelopment, and there's this one holdout in this area that has not and like will not sell them their property, so they can't continue on with this demolition because there's this one person. And so Inchol's job is to try to convince this one person. That one person though happens to be on Pyonghwa and he has no intentions on selling his property, which is a boxing gym. This story is literally about two self-destructing men whose orbits collide. It is so good. It's barely even a romance. I would actually say it's kind of not a romance at this point. I think before when I was talking about Masterpiece, I said something about how it felt more like, you know, mutual curiosity, maybe like one-sided lust. And I would say I'm definitely feeling the same way by the end of season 1. Though I will say like there's a level of concern, a level of care coming from Inchol. Why is Inchol concerned and caring? Because Pyonghwa likes to get beat up. He gets beat up in the boxing ring, he gets beat up by the men he hooks up with, and he wants Inchol to beat him up too, because he tells him, well, hey, like, I'll sell you the property, I'll give you what you want, if you give me something in return, hit me. Or there's another option. If you don't want to hit me, we can do something else. And that's why I said nothing about this story so far is a love story or a romance, because they're both using each other in a weird way. And obviously coercion is not consent. So nothing is really consensual between the two of them, because Inchol wants something, which is to keep his job. And that's why I said the both of them are self-destructing. Pyonghwa is self-destructing in a very like brutal, violent way. But for Inchol, it's so interesting. There are panels where the two of them are both kind of going about their own self-destruction, and Inchol's is just doing his job, schmoozing at work, having some drinks and some food with people, nothing that seems too crazy. But the way his boss uses him, there's a scene where another character tells him that if his boss told him to jump off a cliff, he would. And that is literally 100% true. If you ask me, the both of them are at rock bottom. Like Inchol might seem like he's very, you know, calm, collected, put together. There's no way. This is definitely the kind of story that's like a character examination. In my original notes from when I first read the story, I wrote that Inchol hates himself and his life, I feel like, because his quest for what? Like recognition, power is also a form of self-destruction. And then with Pyonghwa, you're obviously like, well, something's wrong with him, because why does he want to be beaten up like this? Despite what people on the internet will tell you, it's not normal to want to be beaten up. I thought there was also a very interesting panel at the end of the story where Pyonghwa is wearing a t-shirt that says "Witness Me." And in my notes, I wrote that he really does want people to see him and his pain, for people to reckon with the reality of what happened to him, that he isn't just going to quietly disappear. And even his self-destruction is in the most like bloody, explosive, showcasey way possible. Also, speaking of the ending, horrific, like sick to my stomach. I mean, I feel like I knew, but just like terrible to read anyway. The author of Masterpiece, Jumal, has actually created a masterpiece. There's so many other things in the story. Like when it was ongoing, I would see tweets about it. Like there's so many little Easter eggs. Like Pyonghwa has a bunch of movie posters in his room, and there's this one panel with a bunch of business cards. You can really tell some of the media that inspired Jumal. Oh, also there's a song Pyonghwa is listening to at the end of it. It's by Muse. I can't remember what it's called now though. I think it might have been called Stockholm Syndrome, because I was thinking like he probably felt held captive by his trauma, but also like maybe he can't give up all these terrible coping mechanisms that he has despite being told to. This is truly a modern day masterpiece. Even Pyonghwa's name means peace. And there's a scene where he's wearing a t-shirt that says some sort of line from the Bible, something like, "I did not come to bring peace, I came to bring a sword," or something like that. I really love both characters. They're both so interesting. Inchol, especially because he's not a particularly good person. The way he thought he was in control of the situation with Pyonghwa, absolutely not, has not been since day one. It's also, despite being a darker story, kind of funny at times. Pyonghwa especially is really funny. Like Inchol says something like, you know, you might as well ask me to kill you, and Pyonghwa's like, that could work as well. Also, the art, absolutely beautiful, and the paneling, it was so cinematic. You can tell that author Jumal really likes movies, because in addition to all the movie posters and stuff, just the way it was framed, so many of the scenes were so beautiful. Oh, there's like a bunch of mirror reflections. There's this like awful photo montage at the end of the story. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. Literally just like sickening. The art really just adds so much more to the story. An already deep story, it just adds an extra layer of depth. I love this story so much. This is required reading. I can't wait to see how everything will go in season 2, because a lot was revealed right at the end of season 1. Also, watching Inchol and Pyonghwa together is like watching like an animal in the Sahara about to get eaten. I can't look away though. I love them together. The next and last spread for this video is for my reading journal as well. I actually have a couple of other spreads to show you from my movie journal, but I'll show you those at the end of the video, of course. But this spread is actually about 2 different things. Well, technically 3 different things that I read. So the left side of the page is about Sleeping on Paper Boats, Volume 2, and the right side of the page is about volumes 1 and 2 of The Yakuza's Bias. I was just recently mentioning that I wanted to read all of these things because I read Myther by Teki Yatsuda, and so these are her other works. I read Sleeping on Paper Boats Volume 1 around Halloween last year. I'm pretty sure the video that I talked about it in was on Halloween when I posted it. I didn't want to make an entire spread just for it because there really was not that much to say about it. I feel like I would have been spoiling all of you if I would have talked about it too in depth, but I will say, whenever I was talking about Volume 1, I was saying that it was kind of confusing, and I was talking out like my thoughts about it was either like Kay, the main character, was truly being haunted by death, like it was a supernatural story, or all of that was made up in his head and he was just, you know, hallucinating. And I actually do think it was good and important for Volume 1 to be written that way, because you are following Kay, who is troubled. You learn in Volume 2 that he's been repressing some memories. I thought Volume 1 and Volume 2 were both really good. I thought the romance kind of was more like forward in Volume 2 as well, which was nice. In case you missed me talking about Sleeping on Paper Boats before, it's essentially about this guy who is a screenwriter, and he is being plagued with this vision of death, which looks like a younger version of him actually, because he was in this like tram car accident when he was a child. This is set in post World War II Japan. So when he was a kid, an American Jeep or something like that ran into the tram and it caught on fire, and everyone except for him and another little boy died. And the story is about the 2 of them, the little boy, who is now, of course, also a grown man, re-meeting as adults. And like I said, Volume 2, definitely not anywhere near as confusing as Volume 1. I feel like I had a lot of thoughts, like a lot of deeper thoughts about Volume 1. And Volume 2, I'm like, oh, okay. All of those thoughts about Volume 1 still stand though. Like I do think there were a lot of like deeper metaphors that could have been taken from Volume 1. And then the other side of the spread, like I said, is about The Yakuza's Bias Volume 1 and 2. The series is not done. It's just on hiatus because she's writing Myther right now, you know? So it's kind of fun actually to know that there will be more installments of The Yakuza's Bias. This series is kind of what it looks like. It's about a man who is the second in command for a Yakuza clan, and he like falls in love. Not really falls in love. Well, he gets really interested in this idol group. Specifically, he has his favorite member, his bias, June. Sleeping on Paper Boats is a BL, but The Yakuza's Bias is not. It's a comedy series. It is so silly and funny. The boss's daughter is the one that gets him into this idol group, and to him, his bias is just like the ultimate man. The boss's daughter, her name is Megumi. She shows him like how to make a Twitter account. He's tweeting this like fan fiction essentially. It's about his bias being a Yakuza member, and you know, he starts getting really involved into being a fan of the group, and so he shows up at places. He goes to the concert. The members of the group actually see him. He goes to a little high touch event, and like every time people see him, they're like, oh my god, he's so scary. Like, should we call the cops? Is he supposed to be here? There was also a really cute scene where they went to a cafe that June had eaten at, or maybe all the members had eaten at, and these girls like also take pictures with him. It's so fun. It really is just so representative of being a K-pop fan. It was so fun. There's even a scene where Ken, that's his name, Ken, and Megumi are like watching some of the members do a live, and they don't know what they're saying because it's in Korean. And Ken is like, I really want to, you know, express the full extent of my feelings towards them. And all he just says is like, please take care of yourselves. I just thought that was so funny because that's so real. It's like you want to say everything to these people and like tell them how much you mean to them, and that like you'll always follow them everywhere, as Ken would say. And you just end up saying like, you know, hope you're doing well. Take care of yourself. I have now read all of Yatsuda Teki's work except for the ongoing Volume 3 of Myther, which is crazy. As I said when I was talking about Myther, all of her work is so good. The fact that she has 2 darker BL stories, a seinen sci-fi series, and then a comedy series about a yakuza falling in love with a K-pop idol, like her range. But now that this spread is finished, I'm going to put all the spreads that I made today into my digital journals. As I said, I do have some movie journal spreads to show you, which you'll see right after I put these spreads into my reading journal. I recently watched 2 movies. The first one was Fight Club. I honestly never thought I would watch it because the twist was spoiled for me like a long time ago. I don't know how you can grow up on the internet and like have not had Fight Club spoiled for you. I thought it was interesting. I didn't really like the end of it. The cinematography was beautiful, of course, you know, the direction, David Fincher. I feel like movies criticizing like the American dream and consumption culture just like don't really do anything to me because like I'm already aware of all those things. I've already been thinking all those thoughts. And then the other movie I watched / rewatched was Interstellar. Something about the people, the astronauts that went to space recently. I don't know why that just like inspired me to rewatch Interstellar. Technically, this is the first time I've seen Interstellar all the way through. The first time I watched it, I must have watched it on TV, like on cable. And so I had definitely missed the beginning of it. I was honestly just in the mood to watch a Christopher Nolan film in general. Like I started rewatching Batman Begins and I was like, I don't really like this one that much. I love Cillian Murphy as the Scarecrow though. The look, the glasses, very 2000s. But those are the 2 movies I watched. I just didn't feel like recording spreads for them. Honestly, like I just feel like I had not that much to say about either movie because I'd kind of seen most of Interstellar and Fight Club. I was just like, yeah, Also, the reason I kind of watched Fight Club was just like in preparation for reading Masterpiece, actually. I feel like it's been so long since I recorded a voiceover. Like, I feel like I have more to say, but I don't know. I always never know what I want to say at the end of these videos. Oh, my best friend got me another Miffy blind box. She's so cute. I think it's the Miffy Doing Things series, and I got the one where she's going to school. She's got her little bag or her little books. So cute. Her boyfriend came into my house again, and I did not make eye contact with him until they were going to leave. And then I gave him a weird side hug. I was like, it's nice to see you again. Anyway, it's nice to see you again too. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Everything I used in today's spreads will be in my Pinterest board. The link to that is in the description box, along with the links to all of my other social media accounts, as well as the links to all the Google Drive folders for all of my journal deco kits. If you have any questions, please let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. I hope your April has been going well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone!